Hello, everyone. And I hope everyone had a great Diwali. We had Diwali yesterday, so happy Diwali. While we are back focusing on women's health 40 and above, today what we want to talk about is the cortisol, the stress hormone. So we're talking about this. We have Adele. Adele is a health coach. She focuses on women's hormonal health. Welcome, Adele. And she's joining me from UK. So UK has a prime.
Oh, I lost you.
Just wanted to congratulate that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Are you ready for me to start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Amazing. So I'm a women's health practitioner and I'm part of a collaboration of women who support perimenopause called Perimenopause. And today I am going to give you such a brief whistle-stop tour because this doesn't even touch the sides, but I just really want to honor the time that we have together. And actually look at the fact that the main issue that we have with balancing our hormones is how stressed we are. We're completely desensitized to our stress level. And this has put us in this state of hyperarousal, which has a massive impact on our hormone balance. So in this webinar, I'm just going to introduce you to the concept of the interplay of our hormones, where and why addressing stress is absolutely a one way to manage our symptoms. So I really hope you can all see this, because this slide really begins to put this in context, because quite often when we're looking at perimenopause or any hormone imbalances, we're focusing on progesterone and estrogen, but actually not all hormones are created equal. And as you can see in this image, actually there's a hierarchy, and I would actually put cortisol above this now. She really is the queen bee of our hormones, and she has this really close relationship with insulin. So when these two go out of whack, the whole thing crumbles. And actually, when I'm working with women, we balance these two. We focus on the cortisol and the insulin. And what we often see is many of the symptoms women experience during perimenopause begin to settle down. One of the key things being that women start to sleep better, which is a huge issue for us during perimenopause, right? So let's just look a little bit at cortisol. This is the focus of this very brief lecture and introduction to this. But I lovingly refer to this as the old crap hormone, okay? Our cortisol is released from our adrenal glands, which sit just above the kidneys, and its job is to save our life. It makes us fight or flee from a predator, or maybe even freeze. But it's basically designed to overrule the non-essential functions in our body to help us run away and save our life. So outside of this role, its daily functioning was meant to rise in the morning, to wake us up, and then gently decline during the day. However, our lifestyles have got us in this constant state where cortisol is just being released. In fact, they did a study that showed that cortisol was pumped out with every ping of the phone. Every time your phone gets a message, it releases cortisol. So you could be sat happily just watching Netflix and your body is just pumping out this cortisol. So this modern living has really created some health issues, particularly for us as women with our hormone balance. And this is the way that cortisol is released. Okay, so this is something called our HPA axis, which is our stress response. And it stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which basically is the way that our brain perceives a stress and then sends a message down to our adrenals to pump out this cortisol. So as I said, it shuts down these non-essential bodily functions, one of which is ovulation. So at a time in our life where we're trying to maximize our ovulation to have all these beautiful reproductive hormones that protect our long-term health, actually the cortisol is sending a message to not do this. So as you can see, when this is happening all the time, you know, for example, it shuts our digestive system, it makes that slow down. And so you can see how digestive issues become linked with stress, and the gut plays a huge role in our hormonal health. Can you hear me okay? Sorry, it keeps cutting out. And when we're operating at this level a lot and all of it in a chronic state where our cortisol is pumping out, over time our adrenals get really tired. So this causes something called HPA axis dysfunction, which has before previously been termed adrenal fatigue. So really balancing our cortisol is fundamental to our overall health. And as you can see here, cortisol has a sister hormone called melatonin. They play this beautiful symphony together in our circadian rhythm. This is our 24-hour inner timekeeper that men and women have. But of course, we have this beautiful second inner timekeeper, which is our monthly rhythm, our infradian rhythm. And if our circadian rhythm is out of balance due to imbalances with our cortisol, melatonin, this can have a significant effect on our monthly cycle. So you can see here in this image, ideally cortisol rises to peak first thing in the morning to get us up and out of bed, which is the awakening response, and steadily decline during the day so that melatonin, our sleep hormone, can rise to get us ready for bed. However, our non-stop 24/7 lifestyle has messed with this. So once we start to see this dysfunction happen here, it really affects our hormonal shifts, which obviously we don't want as we're trying to balance things out as much as we can. So how do you know if this is something that's being affected by you? Many of the symptoms you can see here on this slide are probably what people would put down just to modern living, but actually they are significant whispers of your body being in a dysregulated state. So they're quite simple to notice, but we're so busy rushing through our lives, we don't always feel them. So we can experience this brain fog, struggling to remember things, and we can feel quite tired during the day, but then get into the evening and suddenly kind of have this second wind, feeling quite wired and struggling to get to sleep. And this interplay between cortisol and insulin, they have a really close working relationship. And if cortisol is not working properly, insulin probably isn't going to be either. So we start to get this poor blood sugar regulation where we see cravings, we start relying on caffeine for a boost. We get this afternoon energy slump. And we can, one of the other things is if you find yourself waking up at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, this is quite often due to this dysregulation. But some of the other things you might experience are like issues with your blood pressure, finding yourself picking up lots of colds and struggling to get rid of them, these digestive issues, just a consistent mood imbalance, maybe gaining some weight around the tummy because of this insulin relationship, this fatigue, maybe craving salts. So we really start to see these little things that we might not see as massive issues, as symptoms, but they're ways of your body trying to communicate with you. There are some functional medicine tests available as well, but usually the symptoms themselves are enough for us to be able to figure out what is happening. So what causes these stresses? I mean, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you the sources of stress in your life, but it is just worth looking at this just to notice that there are some maybe more hidden ones that we're not aware of, like mold toxicity and parasites and viruses such as Epstein-Barr. So if you feel like you're doing all the things, because let's be honest, we have so much access to information around how to support ourselves during this, it might be that you want to pick out some of these less obvious signs of cortisol dysregulation. So feel free to take a screenshot of this and have a look at it and just sort of really analyze about, you know, where is this stress coming from into your life? But the good news is that once we start to embody some strategies to start to manage this, we can start to feel better. You know, unfortunately, as much as I love a good bubble bath and going on a retreat, that's not actually going to usually deal with the stresses. It can start to take the edge off, but actually you want to create a life that you don't need to retreat on, so that you give your beautiful, yummy hormones space to balance out. And I promise you it's worth it. As women, we really struggle to prioritize non-negotiable time to reset ourselves, to calm down our nervous system. And this isn't always easy. You know, sometimes this can be having a difficult conversation to put a well-needed boundary in place for yourself. We have so many demands on us, being pulled in lots of different directions. We kind of become desensitized to that and it becomes our norm. However, once we start to address some of these issues, we can really improve our well-being. And like I say, this can be things like, you know, letting go of pointless arguments, practicing saying no, avoiding the toxic, stressful people in our lives. So often as women, we hold on to relationships that we've outgrown due to a feeling of some kind of that we owe something to that relationship, but actually it doesn't serve us. Where can we begin to delegate things? Where can we ask for help? This is not a sign of failure. This is a sign of us acknowledging where we are. I'm a big fan of women's circles, joining spaces, particularly this Facebook group where you can access lots of support and information, looking at some gratitude practice, being kind and compassionate with yourself. Give yourself a break, full permission to take a rest guilt-free. So often as women, we go to take a break and then we see just one more job that will get done, just one more thing, we'll just do that and then we can rest. And then before we know it, the space we had to slow down has gone. So really trying to make self-care, which I'm not a fan of that term, but really trying to make that non-negotiable time for you, particularly during perimenopause, because if we don't, we really crash land into this season. So here are just some of my favorite practices. I'm sure you can think of your own, but these are things that are fairly easy to incorporate into your life, and yet they have this huge impact on this HPA axis and therefore reducing your cortisol. You know, as women, we can struggle to meditate and be still. Now, there's great beauty in that practice, but actually using our senses in pleasure practices, like just sitting down with a hot drink and in using all of your senses within that, can be an incredibly calming practice. So feel free to take a screenshot of that so that you've got this to come back to, and I'm sure just add in your own. Sometimes I find having a good journal rant just to download what's in my head can avoid having quite a stressful argument or conversation. So here, you know, sleep, okay? We know the last thing a stressed woman wants to know is that her sleep plays a massive role in her health. It can actually contribute to us feeling more stressed and more uncomfortable. But it is so vital we honor this sleep in this season of our life. My family laugh at me because I have a non-negotiable bedtime of between 9 and 9:30 every day. And it has worked wonders. I used to be a dreadful insomniac and now I sleep beautifully. And one of the reasons is by having this really robust sleep hygiene, trying to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time each day, avoiding screens in the evening, only using your bedroom for sleep and like all the loveliness that comes with being intimate with somebody, keeping a room cool and comfortable, lovely natural fabric, cottons, particularly if you experience sweats at night, maybe even a wet weighted blanket if you're somebody who experiences anxiety. A weighted blanket can be useful, and of course lovely essential oils like things like vetiver and lavender are really great at night. I also like to suggest avoiding caffeine after 12 o'clock in the afternoon if you're somebody who drinks caffeine. And just have fun in the evening instead of focusing through how many more emails can I complete, how many more messages can I get to. Turn it off and just sit and have some pleasure and some fun in your life. So this really has been a whistle-stop tour of being able to introduce this to you and how stress is affecting your hormones. I would really like to invite you to go back and list your stressors and consider which ones feel available to you to be able to tackle. You know, remember to start small. This isn't about going in and going, right now I've got to get rid of all these people in my life. Actually, it might just be sitting and journaling and reflecting on who fills your cup, who takes from you, you know, and then consider some of the habits that you'd like to gently introduce, you know, doing things quickly and fast and all of this. It triggers this HPA axis. When we're able to bring things into our life that force us to slow down, it can be as simple as just laying in bed and taking 5 deep breaths before we start our day. So we really begin to start our day with intention. So I really hope that that was of use to you. I'm very conscious that we had this time frame to just introduce this concept to you, that before going in to tackle the progesterone and estrogen during this phase, perhaps come up that hierarchy and really work on your stress response and your insulin balancing. There we go. And if anyone would like to stay in contact with me.
I think it was to the point, Succinct. A lot of us, well, all of us, stress is part of our life, right? No matter where you live in the world nowadays, right? Now, the important thing is to understanding the way you explain why balancing stress and managing stress is so paramount for our bodies, and why stress is the queen bee. Like, I don't think we understand that part, that the queen bee, we have to take care of the queen bee, you know. So I think understanding the fundamentals of why stress management is important is what you brought today to the viewers, to people, to that you can do it, but you have to understand why you have to do it, and if you don't do it, what it's going to do to you, right? So then that's why you're doing yoga, journaling, breathing exercises, all those other things. So really appreciate that, because I think this is very important for us to understand fundamental reason.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we are coming up with the programs and workshops for women over 40 in January. So give us some time, couple of months to get organized, but stay tuned. And that's what we'll be coming up with, really exciting programs. So thank you so much for your support. Bye-bye.